How's it going, everyone? It's Dusty Tucker. How's it going, everybody? It's Dusty Tucker. Today I got a different video for you guys. I have recently posted a video on if it's worth reloading 9mm. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's down in my channel there. It's not too far back. But this video is going to be on if it's worth reloading 5.56, also in Canada. This ammo is still relatively cheap in the US, so nobody's going to really consider that, of course. But in Canada, this box of simple 55 grain FMJ Winchester ammunition is for sale at my local store for $21.99 a box. So it's over $1 around now for 5.56. I never thought I'd see this day, but here we are. I remember paying $10, $12, $13 for a box not that long ago, but here we are. So I never thought it would be, even a considered possibility that I would be reloading 5.56, but here I am, reloading 5.56. So there's the main components that you need to get. So before the hardcore reloaders comment on this video, this is going to be your standard run-of-the-mill full metal jacket 5.56 that I'm mainly going to be talking about today, not your match grade competition blah 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 ammo. This is just going to be FMJ talk mainly. I'll dip a little bit into the other stuff, but I don't want to get too carried away. I don't want this video to be too long. Got myself a nice whiskey. Okay, let's get into it. So I have just currently started reloading some 5.56. The stuff I have on order, I can't even show you what it is because I don't have any of it. It is, it's CamPro projectiles. It's a big bag of 1,000 projectiles, and you can buy it for really cheap, and it's not stupid inaccurate. It's actually good stuff. I use the same for my 9mm. 1,000 projectiles is around $120 some. You just can't compete with that. It's impossible. Lots of these bullet companies they're probably like, oh, like we can't go that low with our stuff. But and I've actually pushed those. They're not terrible. Like, they are accurate. I've gone to the range. I've loaded over 1,000 projectiles of those CamPros, and they are actually pretty good. They're not shit. So, CamPro projectiles. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go to the beginning. Brass. Well, you can buy it. You can buy brand new brass if you want your pants pulled down. That's one route to go. If you like getting bleeped in the ass without a reach around, go ahead and buy your brass. Winchester brass is about $60 to $80 for 100. I don't know why you would do that when you can just go to the range and find some brass that's laying around that someone else shot that obviously doesn't reload. And yes, before you get the FUDs that comment on here, oh, what if it's a crimped primer pocket? Well, let's tell you, there's a tool. Actually, let's see if I have an example here. I might have an example of one of those brass in here. Bear with me, I will find one. I know that there's one in here. I know it. I know it. I know it. I know it. Everyone I've grabbed has just happened to be... Here we go. This, I hope my camera focuses, but this was a crimped primer pocket. This is a surplus piece of brass. And you can buy a Lyman chamfering tool, and you can basically just chuck it into a drill and just... And guess what? You can put a primer back in there. So for the people that say you can't reload military brass, now this is brass, not steel casing or polymer casing. This is brass. So if you can't tell if it's brass, then maybe get a friend to show you. But you can reload them, and they do work fine. The primers don't back out. Nothing crazy happens. This just happens to be a compressed load, so it's full of powder. It won't even make any noise because it is completely compressed powder. And I've shot these already several times, and the primer does not back out. It does not get squished. Nothing happens to the primer. There's no pressure issues. None of that. You can reload it. You just need the extra tool that costs like $8 to do it. It's a little more prep, but whatever. So, brass. I don't know why what I would do if I was somebody that wanted to reload 5.56 without spending an arse load of money, I would go to a local range, an indoor range, preferably, because it's probably a lot easier to acquire. And as long as they're not gouging for once fired brass, go ahead and see how much they want for their once fired brass, and maybe scoop up a 5-gallon pail of 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever. It's totally worth it, I think. I haven't done it yet. That's because I just basically have my own reclaimed brass and other stuff I found at the range. Obviously, you want to look over the brass, because I have shot once fired brass before, or I have shot a projectile out of a casing that was previously loaded once. Anyways, you can find little hairline fractures in the neck usually, sometimes. You can't obviously reload that, so you just whip it into the bush or something. You don't want to, or throw it in the garbage. Or what I like to do is actually take a pair of side cutters and just give it a nice old, claw mark, flatten it, or do whatever, put a gouge in it. Make it so that someone else doesn't have to go up to it and be like, ooh, I wonder if that's reloadable. Maybe I'll keep it. And then they try to reload it, and then you're just going to save everyone trouble, right? So if you see one with a split case or split neck, or if it's starting to look like it's separated, or if it's really thin, if you can take it and just move it with your thumb, yeah, don't reload that. It's gonzo. But there is a lot more prep work involved in reloading the 5.56 versus the 9mm. If you're new to reloading, I will enlighten you slightly. There's a bunch of case prepping that you have to do before you can just load it and go, just like the 9mm. It's not going to be that easy. You need to, in the order that I like to do it for when I reload 5.56, what I like to do is I like to use a universal decapping die. I will do that first for all the brass, and then I will clean the brass. In my case, it's a wet tumbler with Dawn dish soap and Lemmy Shine. I will do that for a couple of hours, rinse it, put fresh stuff in, let it run another hour, and then pull it out, separate it, dry it in the oven. And then once it's all dry, I lay it out on a towel, make sure that it's dry. And then I take my drill, because I don't have a tool for this yet, because they're ridiculously expensive, and I might just build one. It's an annealing brass tool. You can get them. You can either get like a homemade one or make one yourself. Making one yourself is probably a lot cheaper, which is what I want to do eventually. But for now, basically what I'm doing is taking the brass and chucking it into a drill, turning it to low speed and turning it and just pulling the trigger so it just, it's turning relatively, I don't know, I can't, if I had to guess, maybe 20 RPM or something. It's very slow. And you take a propane torch, you turn it on, and you just kind of leave it there. You chuck this into the drill, and you heat it up, just the neck and the shoulder. You heat it up until it's like a dull red, not until it's glowing red, until it just starts to. It's easier to do it in a low light situation. If you, what I like to do is maybe turn off half the lights of my room if you have the option, or just maybe turning off all your lights and just using your blinds to adjust the right light. Once you start getting just a dull red tinge, just before it starts to get a little bit orange, that's where I like to stop it and then I just drop it onto the floor, and it's just on a big tin tray. And I'll do that to all of the brass. You let all of it cool down, and then I like to put a little bit of lube on it and then run it through a full-length sizing die. And yes, I suggest using a full-length sizing die, not just a neck sizing die, because you never know what rifle it's going to have to be used in, right? And for those of you who are new to reloading, if you just neck size this piece of brass, it might still work in my rifle. But let's say I want to go take a bunch of rounds out to Joe Schmo and shoot his AR or whatever he has. Maybe they won't chamber in his rifle. Maybe his tolerances are different and they have, I don't know, less tolerance or more tolerance or whatever. It may not cycle in his semi-automatic 223 or 5.56 rifle. So just do the full length size. Don't get into that. People will say, well, your brass will last longer if you just do the neck sizing. I would just full length size it and then call it that. That way you can just grab a handful of shells and shoot it in whoever's 5.56 rifle. It doesn't matter. So it's a little bit of brass processing. So after you heat treat it, after you deep prime it, clean it, heat treat it, size it, guess what? There's another step. I know, it's ridiculous. There's a lot. It took me quite a while to process this amount of brass. And I don't even know how much is there. Maybe a couple hundred, 300 maybe. It takes quite a bit, especially with the drill and the torch. You might go through a bottle of propane doing 500 rounds. Who knows? But it's worth it because I'll get to the numbers eventually. For those of you who are here just for the numbers, I'll get there, trust me. And then you need to trim it, because if you don't trim it, especially if you have projectiles with a cantilever or some kind of indication of where your seating depth should be or something like that. I don't have an example of these projectiles because they're just smooth all the way around. But when I get the Cam Pros, maybe I'll show them. I'm pretty sure they're smooth too. I don't think there's any little indication of where to stop. But anyway, you find your case trim length, which in this case for me is 1.755 inches. So that's my case trim length. That's just what I've used. And sometimes you'll even put a piece of brass in your trimmer and you go to trim it and it won't take any material off. Well, obviously it's within that tolerance, so it's fine. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So once you deprime it, yes, I repeat myself a lot, I know, I don't care. You deprime it, you clean it, you heat treat it, anneal it, whatever, and then you full length resize the brass, and then you trim it. The reason you want to do it in that order, at least in my opinion, is because if you trim it first and then size it, well, you're stretching the brass after you trim it. So technically it could be a little bit longer or shorter or whatever. The brass moves when you size it all the time, right? So you want to trim it after you size it. That way you have uniform brass, and they should all be within 100,000ths of an inch or something like that. Anyways, so it's a lot of prep. It takes me quite a while to do a large amount of 5.56. There is a tool you can get. Well, it's a kind of a big tool. It has a giant hopper on it. You put all the brass facing the same way in the hopper, and then there's a wheel that spins, and it kicks out a piece of brass, and it's rotating along a drum. And basically it'll rotate along the drum rotates, the brass rotates, and then there's a little peg. Once the peg gets to a certain distance, it'll kick it and drop it. And then you have your torch set up at an angle, whatever. It takes a little bit to set up, but once you got it, you can just basically fill the hopper and walk away. So it'll just anneal it by itself, and then it'll drop into another hopper, and then it's done. So you could basically just fill that hopper up top. You could extend it or whatever. You just fill it, and then basically the cases come around, anneal, drop, and you just let it run on its own for however long you want, whatever. How you can time it maybe the first time to see how long it takes, and then just set a timer on your phone the next time you do it. It's a lot easier, and it's kind of like you just load it and then forget about it. You don't have to worry about it, which is nice. I mean, it's something I'll probably get to eventually, but it's another tool that. And the reason why you want to anneal your brass is because you want to, because it's a bottleneck. Basically, there's a lot of pressure being forced through that bottleneck, and that puts a lot of stress on that brass. A lot. If you don't heat treat your brass, what you can actually have happen is, I call it case head separation. So basically, it blows up, the round goes through the barrel, and then when the ejector pulls the brass, if there's enough stress on the brass, and usually where it happens is right before the shoulder here, what'll happen is it'll actually separate, and it'll look like a straight hull that just got ejected. And then if you see that, don't shoot another round, because basically you have a piece of brass stuck in your chamber, and you're gonna have to basically take your gun apart to get that out, unless you're lucky. If it's in there loosely, you can flick it out with like a metal dental pick or something. You might get lucky. I've never had it happen before, so I hope it doesn't happen. But that's why my rule of thumb is let's say I buy a box of 5.56 from the store. I'll shoot it, keep the brass, reload it, do all that preparation, shoot it again, keep it. I'll shoot it twice after, and then I usually just whip them in the bush. And what I do is I'll take a black Sharpie and I'll just put one line across for once reloaded. I'll put an X for 2, and once I shoot it and I pick it up off the ground and I see that X in the bush, I don't want to try reloading it any more than twice, because I don't want anything happening in my gun, especially I know that some people will argue with me saying you could probably shoot 5 or 6 times, but for me it's twice and done, and I won't go any more than that, because that's I don't want shit to happen when shit's happening, if you know what I mean. So brass, it took me a while. I'm sorry if this video gets long. I apologize. I'm just trying to cover everything to make people happy. So that's your brass. So basically it's free unless you have lots of money. Then why are you reloading anyways? But cheers. Okay, so now we got to talk about, we'll do powder. So Winchester 5.56 white box, 55 grain full metal jacket ammo that you can buy from the store. I did a little bit of research, and this is the powder that they use. Winchester 748. That's the powder they use in their 5.56, and it's kind of funny because it looks like pistol powder. They're little tiny flakes that almost looks like fish food, like miniature fish food. That's the powder they use. I haven't loaded any with this yet. I just bought this. This is a brand new bottle. It's actually cheaper than Varget and some other stuff, like IMR 4064 and stuff like that. It's cheaper than that, which is kind of nice, at least in my store. This was $74. Not too bad, but this will only reload you about around 300 rounds. So you need, if you want to get that 1,000 round mark, you want to buy 3 of these at least. We'll get you there. So it gets up there. It's a little bit pricey because you got to buy 3 unless you can find a good deal on like a 4-pound container of it. They don't really make too many 4-pound containers anymore. But if you can find a 4-pound container of this stuff for cheap, do that instead if you want to load a bunch. So 3 of these would be about $220-ish for 3 of these. So you got to factor that in your cost. So let's say you got your brass for free. I'm not going to put the cost of dies in because I don't want to make this video too long. Plus maybe let's say you can borrow a die set from a buddy. So you got to buy the powder. And the only reason I'm pointing this powder out in this video is because that's what they use for this. I'm basically trying to replicate this ammo because I don't want to load match grade stuff like this, but train with this, adjust my scope with this and train with this. And then let's say if shit hits the fan and I need to use this shit, well, it's a different point of aim. So that's why I want to load with, factory style. I want to get around that, 3180 feet per second or something like that. That's roughly what I'm aiming for. I haven't acquired this yet, by the way. This will be the first time that I actually load this stuff once I get those projectiles. Yeah, that's powder. There's other powders you can get. You can get IMR 4064, 3031. You can get Varget. There's a bunch of different powders you can get. But most of those powders are like more match grade ammo powders, like Varget. Varget is a match grade ammo powder. 4064 is pretty good. That's what I have loaded in these green tips. They're not actually M855 green tips. They're just like polymer tipped hollow point type green tips. At least I think they are. Pretty sure they are. Yeah, polymer tip. So these would be good for soft targets. They're very accurate, by the way. I'll show you that in a minute. So projectiles, like you could go with the match ammo, but even for 100 bullets, you're paying $60. So at that point, it's almost not quite worth reloading because that's kind of expensive. I purchased them because I was curious and I wanted to see how accurate a 5.56 could even be. Just because I was curious and wanted to see how accurate I could get a match grade projectile to be. And then I'll tweak the FMJs, the Campro ones as well, to see if I can get them accurate as well. With this powder, I will play around with the different charges and see what the best accuracy is. Not only that, though, I need to test these out at 500 yards because I would prefer if I can load basically the same ammo as this, so I don't have to adjust point of aim when I change ammo types or whatever. I'd like everything to kind of be the same. So that's what my goal is, and that's what my prices and everything are going to be based off of, are those bullets. So now we got primers. Primers are just not going down at all. Now that powder has come back in stock and everything, you can actually find powder again in Canada. It took a couple of years, but you can actually find some now. And if you get it from the right place, you don't have to pay ridiculous prices. So essentially, let's say primers. They're about $12.99 for a small rifle primer. And before people start talking about why can't I use small pistol primers in a small rifle primer pocket, there is a difference. It may not be much, but it's enough to make a difference, and I would just stick with the rifle primers. Trust me on this one. The cup thickness, I can't even show this because it's such a small thing. Basically, the amount of material that you have of the cup is thinner with the pistol primers than the rifle primers, because technically, or the rifle primers actually punch a little bit farther into the primer than pistols do. Sometimes you have a light spring or something on a factory pistol that needs to be able to, punch it, but not as hard as the rifle. So there is a difference. You don't want to use small pistol in small rifle because you could actually get a puncture through the primer. And if you go through that primer, basically you'll get blowback, and you'll know right away. You'll feel it, and you might even get some in your face. You'll get blowback. The round might not completely cycle the action, because you got gas escaping from the rear. You might get a stoppage. It's just not worth trying. I wouldn't try it. I wouldn't trust it. So just stick with small rifle primers for small rifle primers. So it's about $130 without tax for 1,000 of those. So keep that in mind. I bought a couple thousand a couple years ago for $8, so my cost is a little bit less, and I still have over 1,000 of those primers. So I'll just do new cost though. What everything. This is in Canada, like I said. So you got primers and you got powder. So you're at, let's say, $220 for powder for 3 bottles, because it's 7,000 grains of powder per bottle. And at 25 grains, what is that? Like just under 300 rounds or something, just over 300 rounds. I can't do the math in my head right now. But you'll need 3 bottles to make about 1,000 rounds. So that's around $220 for powder. And then for primers, that's about $130 for primers. Projectiles, like I said, Cam Pro has a big bag of 1,000 projectiles for $124, which is unbeatable. You can't find that anywhere as far as I'm concerned. And they're decent projectiles. They're not shit. So you have a grand total of around $470 per 1,000 rounds. Okay? And that's, some of it's tax in, some of it's not. It's just a round number. It's what I got. So $470 per 1,000. Okay, well, that's not bad. It's been better, but it's not terrible. Considering going to Cabela's and buying, they call it what's the name of it? They have a bucket of, I don't know, I think it's like 200 or 300 rounds of 5.56 or something like that. And it's like the Patriot bucket or something like that. And it's like $250 or something for 300 rounds. It's not even worth it. I don't know. Like they make it seem like, oh, it's a deal because it's bulk, but it's not, because this is $21.99. That's basically $1 a bullet, right? That's before tax. It's like $23-24 after tax, which is retarded. I'm saying that word. I don't give a shit. If you don't like it, too bad. Move on. 5.56, $21.99. So that Patriot bucket, we'll call it, because it's in no way means Patriot. That's like 250 some bucks. It's not even a deal, man. Like, get out of it. So let's say you want to buy a big bulk 1,000 round box of loose stuff, and I priced out a couple of different places, but Cabela's, you can get it. It's anywhere from $750 to $800. It's just, it's not worth it. Even in bulk, you're not getting a deal. There was one time they actually had a sale, and they were I think they were like $12.80 or something like that for a box of 20. That's when I pulled the trigger and spent a couple $100. I think I bought 1,400 or 1,600 rounds for around $200 or something like that. It was a good deal, and I wish that would come around more frequently, because I'd like to stock up again, especially when you're training. I have a video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, or if you even follow my channel. I don't know. I don't know what you guys watch. I don't know what you guys are into, hence why I'm going all over the place with these videos. But I have a video called Low Ammo Training, and basically I use one of these boxes and one box of 59mm ammunition. So I use 70 rounds, and I just train with 70 rounds. Basically, I train 20 rounds. I put 2 rounds in a magazine, and I basically practice double tap, transition, triple tap, and it equals out to just over half a box of 9mm when you finish your 20 rounds. So it's not bad. It's a decent way to train, and you still get enough training and enough building of muscle memory to develop, some kind of training with even just 20 rounds. So if you're like me and you're trying to shoot and train and do whatever on a budget, I'm trying to help with those people. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But that's why this content is out there. Teach is their own. So $470. So let's just say 500 or maybe just over 500 bucks taxes in for 1,000 projectiles versus 750 to 900. So we have our answer. I think, before we have our answer, I should say there is another method. If you want to go this route, it's up to you. I personally wouldn't, but you can buy molds for 22 caliber projectiles. You can buy a 6 cavity mold from Lee. I think it's a 60 grain Spitzer 5.56 mold. I don't know what the diameter is. I can't remember. But it's a 6 cavity and it's a 60, I think it's 60 or 65 drains. Lead's always heavier than jacketed stuff, so that's just a obvious thing there. But you can buy that for about 80 bucks and you can cast your own projectiles. You want to use harder lead, a harder alloy, because it's going fast, so you want a harder alloy. And you have to use a 22 caliber gas check as well, because that's going so fast. It's going to melt the lead in your barrel and you're going to get leading in your barrel. But there's more to it than that. You can't just cast and load and shoot on anything, because depending on what the rifling is in your barrel, your rifling might work really good for a jacketed projectile. But let's say you start shooting lead and you can't hit the broadside of a barn on Tuesday and you're like, what the hell is going on here? Well, if your rifling is too aggressive, it's going to basically eat up that lead and it's going to fill your rifling with lead, and you're basically going to be eventually shooting a smoothbore 22 if you don't, scrape that lead out of your bore. When it comes to 3,000 feet per second, I wouldn't shoot lead. It's too fast for lead. I just wouldn't do it. You can do it if you have a slower rate of twist, maybe like a bolt from a bolt action 5.56 or 2.23. Maybe you can get away with it there, but for a semi-auto, they're typically faster twists. So I wouldn't recommend doing it, but you could save a lot of money that way too. If you already have casting material and you buy a bunch of 22 caliber gas checks, or you could powder coat your bullets and maybe get a little bit longevity that way too. You can do that and save a lot of money that way too. Well, not really a lot though, because I mean $124 for 1,000 projectiles. I would, if it was me, I'm sorry, I'm forking up the $124 for 1,000 projectiles, because then I don't have to worry about casting, lubing, sizing, pushing gas checks on them, or cleaning your gun even more because it's lead. In my opinion, I would just buy the bullets when it comes to this. Now, when it comes to like 45-70 or 45 Colt or 44-40 or like those pistol caliber carbines, lead, I would probably more so lean towards lead than jacketed because it's way cheaper in that case. But then again, there's also Cam Pros you can buy for those. But that's a different wish-wash of crap. So anyways, let's get into some ballistics, if you will. So basically, I'll save the best one for last. I was experimenting with these Sierra Blitz King 22 55 grain jacketed polymer tipped hollow points. It's a mouthful. And I was getting some results at 100 yards. I was curious, and yes, this is not with a lead sled. This is just basically 2 sandbags propped up, gun in the shoulder at a bench, and this is what I shot. So this is with the 55 grain Blitz King bullets by Sierra. This is with Hodgdon Varget. 25 grains of Hodgdon Varget. We have just over 1.5 MOA with those rounds. And yes, I do 5-shot groups because 3-shot groups are for idiots, in my opinion. 3-shot groups don't prove shit. You can get fluky 3-shot groups that are half MOA, and you can get flukes with 3-shot groups, in my opinion. So I like to do 5. 5 is the way I like to do it. If you like to do 3, you can do 3, whatever. Don't take any offense to this video. I'm an idiot. We also have the same bullet with 4895, IMR 4895 powder. That was a 5-shot group at 100 yards. This is my aim point because my rifle's only sighted in at 37 point whatever yards. If you know, you know. So I have to point of aim, and it's about, it's almost a foot high. But I know that, and I have a reticle that I could have probably held that point of aim, but this was just easier to explain and just to hold, whatever. We have just over 1 MOA there with that group. And then our final one, believe it if you will, whatever, to each is their own. This is what I shot. This is IMR 4064, IMR 4064, Sierra Blitz King bullet. We have less than half MOA for that powder. 25 grains of, there are the upper, to you guys it's upper left hole. There's actually 3 holes in there. I shot 5 rounds at this target. So that is insane. So that's the data that I kept, and that's what all these bad boys are loaded with, is 25 grains of 4064 at 100 yards. Now, I know it might be different out at 500 yards. I don't expect it to be, but at 100 yards, that's a damn good group, especially not with a lead sled. Just kind of propped up, whatever. Not offhand, but you know what I mean. So that's the Sierra Blitz King, in case you're curious. It's kind of expensive, but maybe if you're a competition shooter, that might be a route for you. I can't give you the rate of twist information and the barrel length information of my SRV2 Siberian that I shot it out of. And yes, that's out of a semi-auto. Absolutely insane grouping. But these bullets are a lot more expensive to load. Like, these bullets are about 65, 70 cents a round, even loaded. It's not quite compressed powder charge, but it's pretty close to a compressed powder charge. It almost fills the entire case with powder, and then I stick the boat tail bullet on top. But that's pretty much all I got for you guys in this video. I hope you found something useful. Basically, is it worth reloading 5.56? Yes, it is. You're gonna save yourself a couple $100. Actually, more than a couple hundred. Like almost $300-400 bucks you're gonna save per 1,000 rounds if you load it, versus if you just buy it. Unless the price comes down, which I cannot see. They'll use the overseas war as an excuse to why it's so expensive, but Canadians don't even have troops on the ground, so I don't even know. Whatever. At least not that I know of. So, yeah. Absolutely insane for the prices of some of this stuff. The powder used to be a lot cheaper than it is. The primers used to be a lot cheaper than it is. To load this stuff 5-10 years ago would be peanuts. It would be not even a question. But then again, this box was also $9, $10, $11 that long ago too, so no one really thought about reloading that stuff unless you were like into long range shooting or competition shooting or whatever. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Daiboja, and keep shooting.